2012 was one of the most exciting years of gaming, no matter what type of gamer you were. If you like open world games, then Sleeping Dogs had you covered. Sleeping Dogs was developed by unfortunately now closed Canadian game studio United Front Games. This was only the second game they ever made, coming 2 years after their first title, Mod Nation Racers, which was well known for having a pretty cool track editing feature, making it one of the few kart racers to really stick out in a Mario Kart dominated world. After Sleeping Dogs was released, unfortunately United Front Games didn't do much else. Sleeping Dogs, as far as I knew back then, was GTA set in Asia. And yeah, that's basically what it is, at least on the surface. The game has quite a bit more going for it. You play as an undercover cop trying to stop the triad crime organizations in Hong Kong from the inside. So the game has you swapping between gang missions and police missions. Depending on how lawful or chaotic you are will determine what type of EXP you get. Triad XP or Police XP, and each type will give you access to new abilities as you level them up. The combat of the game is melee focused instead of shooting focused, which gives Sleeping Dogs its own unique style compared to other crime-based open world games. The game has a bunch of really neat features too, like there's a button to ram cars, which makes taking down other vehicles much more straightforward. You've got an apartment you can actually decorate with items you can buy in the world. There's also tons of unique costumes, and honestly, it's just cool getting an open world game in the relatively unexplored setting of modern day Hong Kong. Sleeping Dogs wasn't the only game with an alignment system that came out in 2012, because we also got Dishonored by French game developer Arcane Studios. Dishonored is a member of a very interesting type of game called an immersive simulator. There isn't a clear-cut definition of what exactly constitutes an immersive sim, but most of the common features of player freedom and highly systematic gameplay. Immersive sims give you a goal or mission you must complete, but it doesn't tell you how you should accomplish that goal. It's up to you to use the game's various different mechanics and systems to figure out the best way to reach your objective. Dishonored is one of the quintessential examples of the immersive sim. You play as a royal bodyguard who's been framed for the murder of the kingdom's empress, and now you must restore honor to your name by becoming an assassin to take down the conspirators who ruined your reputation and who are now planning to take over the kingdom. You can tackle each mission in a ton of different ways. You can be a nimble ninja lurking through the shadows, stealthily subduing your foes as you make your way to your target. Or you can go full Rambo using your gun and sword to take out the baddies the old-fashioned way. Or you can use your various magic powers like the possession ability to take over the body of a rat and run past your enemies without them even batting an eye. Or you can say, screw the main quest and tackle the variety of side quests spread throughout the map, interacting with side characters who can help you grow stronger and supply you with gear. You can be a cold-blooded killer, or you can preserve your conscience and just use non-lethal takedowns, or you can go full pacifist and avoid enemies altogether. Dishonored gives you a ton of freedom to play the game how you want. If you don't care about freedom and you want something a bit more straightforward and fast-paced, then don't worry, because this year we also got Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 2. In 2009, Sega teased a new Sonic game, codenamed Project Needlemouse. This ended up becoming Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1, a continuation of the classic Sonic series on Sega Genesis. Sonic 4 Episode 1 is not well liked amongst the fan base. It was lambasted for its awkward physics, plastic-looking graphics, and lack of creativity. It felt really corporate and cash-grabby. Fortunately, Sonic 4 got another chance with Episode 2 released 2 years later. Episode 2 fixes several of the issues present in the first game. It has better visuals, more interesting levels, and better physics. While still not a great Sonic game, I would still say Episode 2 is fairly good. It's a pretty comfortable ride all the way through, nothing spectacular about it, but it was a step in the right direction, and a solid game. Even though most Sonic fans would agree that Sonic 4 Episode 2 was better than Episode 1, Episode 2 did not get as good reviews. And to add insult to injury, Sonic 4 Episode 3 was cancelled, meaning this series was left with only 2 episodes. 5 years after Episode 2, we got Sonic Mania, which is basically what most fans consider to be the real Sonic 4 anyway, being a much more spectacular and faithful sequel to the classic series. Funnily enough, the director of Sonic Mania, legendary Sonic community member Christian Whitehead aka the Taxman, was actually asked if he was interested in working with Sega Studios Australia on Sonic 4 Episode 3. Thanks to the success of Sonic Mania and the lack of success of Episode 2 means any chance of the Sonic Sonic 4 series being revived is slim to none. Sonic wasn't the only mascot platformer to go through some rough times in 2012 because Sonic's BFF for life, Mario, didn't have a great year either. I already talked about in the first part of the series how we got not one but two games in the now relatively uninspired new Super Mario Bros. Series, but the Mario spin-off series Paper Mario got its most hated entry in the series yet. Paper Mario Sticker Star. From a gameplay perspective, honestly, Sticker Star, yeah, still bad. I do like the concept of everything in this world revolving around stickers. It's a neat little gimmick that works for combat and even for interacting with the world. It reminds me a lot of how Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories has everything in the world revolving around cards. However, once you start to play more of the gameplay issues start cropping up. Number one is the lack of meaningful rewards from combat. You don't earn experience from battle in this game. There is no experience at all, and I don't have a problem with that, honestly. You don't need experience points to make a fun RPG. Look at Mega Man Battle Network. That series has some of the most customizable, fast-paced, and coolest RPG combat I've ever seen, and it doesn't use EXP at all. But if you aren't using EXP, you have to give some kind of reward for battle, otherwise the combat seems pointless, which is unfortunately Sticker Star's problem. Now, if the combat doesn't give you any meaningful rewards, then you have to make the combat fun for the sake of being fun, which also isn't true in this case. Other Paper Mario games use action commands, which is when you do little mini-games essentially, or button prompts to increase the damage or successfulness of your move. Action commands are a great addition because they increase the skill ceiling of combat and make the whole experience more interactive. And while Sticker Star does have these, the game never tells you they even exist. And there's no variety to the action commands either, which makes a lot of the encounters feel samey. To make things clear, I don't hate the combat for this game, but I'd be lying if I said after a few hours of playing this game, I wasn't going out of my way to avoid battles. My other main issue with the gameplay is the mandatory exploration. Sticker Star encourages you to explore the levels, which is fine, but things go downhill when they require you to backtrack through older levels to find secret exits in order to progress. And just like with the action commands when this happens in World 2, the game never tells you what to do. The game has a hint system, but it's terrible. This is pretty shocking for a Nintendo game. My last major issue with Sticker Star is not with the gameplay, but instead with the story. Because it doesn't exist. The Paper Mario series was famous for its interesting plot lines, engaging characters, and unique locations. Sticker Star has, none of that. Earlier when talking about the gameplay, I mentioned Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, and unfortunately that series too would get a less than stellar received entry in its franchise with Kingdom Hearts 3D Dream Drop Distance. When the game was first announced, I was like, wait, is this Kingdom Hearts 3? Besides Kingdom Hearts Coded, which most people would agree is story-wise one of the least essential entries in the franchise, this was the first game in the series to take place after Kingdom Hearts 2. Sora had a new outfit, something that has only happened in the big numbered entries in the series. The production values were on par with Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2 on the PS2. There's a 3 right there in the title. This game was Kingdom Hearts 3, until Kingdom Hearts 3 was announced about a year later. I guess this would make Dream Drop Distance Kingdom Hearts 2.5? Oh, wait, well, anyway, Dream Drop Distance, for all intents and purposes, was the next big Kingdom Hearts game after 2. Now, this game is, it's a lot. So let's just start with what I like about it. The command deck system from Birth by Sleep returns, which I was a big fan of. It gave you a lot of freedom in how you wanted to make your build for combat with various special attacks, magic spells, and items. Visually, the game is fantastic. It really showed off what the 3DS could do. The new mechanic Flow Motion allows you to leap and zoom all over the map, which is just fun to do. Movement has always been a big part of Kingdom Hearts, with the first game even feeling like a 3D platformer at times. And as always, the music is really good. So, now let's get into the negatives. The combat is pretty easily broken thanks to how powerful flow motion attacks are and the absolutely OP balloon spells. The game's titular drop mechanic is a bar right next to your health bar that when depleted has the character you're playing as just fall asleep, which can happen right in the middle of battle, and then you're forced to play as the other character. This just ruins the pace of the game. The Dream Eaters replaced the more beloved partners from the previous games. They're not nearly as endearing, and for some reason you need to level them up to unlock new abilities. The Dream Eaters were a weird Pokemon raising sim-like addition that I felt there really wasn't any place for in the series. In general, this game just has an overload of mechanics. The command deck, flow motion, dream eaters, dropping, reality shift, the link boards, portals. This game is the definition of extra. And the same thing applies to the story of Dream Drop Distance. Kingdom Hearts has a reputation for having a really overly complex story. And I'll defend the series by saying most people who say this haven't actually played the games. If I were to explain any RPG franchise with over a dozen titles that span over 20 years' time to someone who hasn't played the games, of course they'd be confused. To be fair, the series was definitely starting to get convoluted in Kingdom Hearts 2 with the introduction of the Nobodies and Xehanort, but like I said, it wasn't anything laughably stupid. Until Dream Drop Distance. I guess spoiler alert if you haven't actually played the game yet, but there's alternate dimensions, time travel, possession, retcons, and to top it all off, the game ends without really any sense of finality, and it just seems like a teaser for Kingdom Hearts 3. It's insane just how crazy a Disney and Final Fantasy crossover had become. Kingdom Hearts wasn't the only big crossover in 2012 because we also got Street Fighter Cross Tekken, a fighting game featuring characters from both Capcom and Namco's signature fighting game series. I remember being super hyped for this game based solely on how awesome the character reveal trailers were for this game. They were action-packed, filled with humor, and had fantastic music. I mean, these were almost Smash Bros level of hype reveals. And then there was immediate controversy. On-disc DLC. These 2.5 words were enough to cause instant rage in the hearts of gamers. Capcom had DLC characters that you had to pay extra money for that were already on the disc, meaning it wasn't even DLC, it was LC, loadable content that was just blocked off by a $20 money wall. People were upset that they had to pay even more money for something that was already on a physical disc they had already bought and owned. Then there were the gems, essentially little buffs that you could add on to your characters to improve them. Some of the gems were DLC exclusive, which even further cemented Capcom's reputation of being a greedy, penny-pinching company. The game itself apparently had gameplay issues at launch, but I can't really speak on that since at the time I was super against this game for the on-disc DLC debacle. Fortunately, many of the issues people had with the game were fixed in a patch, but unfortunately it was too little too late. Casual fans were put off by the greedy DLC practices, and hardcore fans already lost interest in the game due to the game design issues. Originally, this game was going to get a sequel, Tekken Cross Street Fighter. Since this game played more like Street Fighter, that game was going to play more like Tekken, but unfortunately, due to the negative reception of Street Fighter Cross Tekken, it doesn't seem like Tekken Cross Street Fighter is going to be coming out anytime soon. Luckily, 2012 gave us a really good fighting game in the indie classic Skullgirls, originally developed by Reverge Labs, then Lab Zero Games, then Future Club, and Hidden Variable Studios. Yeah, the development history of this game is a complete mess, but at the end of the day, the actual game they made was incredible. Skullgirls is well known for its very well endowed all-girl cast. Until it wasn't an all-girl cast, which makes the name Skullgirls kind of a misnomer, but anyway, Skullgirls, from its character design, seemed like a sleazy, shameless fighting game meant to cash in on horn dogs, but upon actually playing the game, you realize how much passion went into this. The animation for this game is gorgeously smooth with beautiful hand-drawn sprites. Fighting games around this time were leaning much more towards 3D graphics, and the ones that didn't use 2D pixel art. This gave Skullgirls a really distinct art style that still holds up perfectly 10 years later. The soundtrack for this game is also really great, some cool jazzy tracks that years later I still listen to from time to time. And of course, we can't forget about the great gameplay. The game is a tag team fighting game where you play as multiple different characters, but the interesting thing about Skullgirls is you can choose how many different characters you want to play as, and how many characters you choose determines how strong they are. You can play as 3 weak characters, 2 strong characters, or 1 super strong character. 3 characters gives you a huge amount of options and variety in your playstyle, but it also means your character's life bars are like tissue paper. 1 character is really powerful and easy to understand, but you have to be really mindful of your character's weaknesses since you don't have other fighters to help you out. And of course, 2 players is a nice balance, not really failing at anything, but also not really excelling at anything either. The gameplay is just really tight and responsive, which is probably why it still has a super active community all these years later. Another reason why Skullgirls is still so beloved is the game is still receiving updates 10 years later with new DLC characters and content. This game is a labor of love, and I can't wait to see where it goes next. Skullgirls was only one of the many amazing indie games to come out of 2012. I mean, we also had FTL, Faster Than Light, created by Subset Games. This is a real-time strategy game where you control a spaceship trying to take important information to a Federation fleet while running away from rebels chasing you down. The space shooter genre is incredibly old. In fact, it's one of the oldest video game genres ever. But FTL puts an interesting spin on it, because instead of controlling a small one-man fighter ship, you're controlling an entire crew aboard a large spacecraft. Instead of being a pilot, you're the captain, managing systems like your shields, making sure enough power is going to your engines in order to evade attacks, and firing missiles at critical points on your enemy ship to bring them down. The game is really intricate with all sorts of upgrades and customization options to improve your ship, like drones, teleporters, and special weapons. As you adventure through the cosmos, you'll encounter pirates trying to take advantage of the war, mechanics trying to make a quick buck, and normal people just trying to survive in all this chaos. And it's up to you to figure out how to deal with it all. Will you be the lawful good hero, doing the right thing, saving everyone in need? Or will you be willing to look past some dastardly behavior if it means keeping your own crew safe? Or if it means you'll get a couple extra bucks. There are no morality meters or alignment systems, so at the end of the day, what happens in the infinite void of space stays in the infinite void of space. It's up to you to play the game how you want, and the game won't judge you for it. FTL is a fantastic indie game that serves as one of the cornerstones of the roguelike genre. But without a doubt, the biggest new indie game of 2012 was Slender, the 8 Pages. Man, that just hit me with a rush of nostalgia. Slender Man is something of an internet horror story or creepypasta, kind of like The Backrooms. He's a super skinny tall guy with long limbs who goes around stalking people. Eventually, a game was made about Slender Man by Mark J. Hadley of Parsec Productions called Slender, later renamed to Slender the 8 Pages, where you play as some person running around in some dark woods trying to collect 8 pieces of paper before Slender Man can catch you. The game is incredibly simple, but that's what made it so effective, and the game ended up blowing up on YouTube. This game, along with games like Outlast by Red Barrels and Amnesia by Frictional Games, helped pave the way for indie horror games, and people playing those games on YouTube helped to create a new wave of YouTube Let's Players. At least that's what we called them back in the day. 2012 was a really crazy year for gaming, and I haven't even talked about all the games that came out this year. You've got Counter-Strike Global Offensive, Sony Smash Bros, XCOM Enemy Unknown, and how could we forget Kinect Star Wars? And I didn't even touch on how big the mobile gaming scene was this year. Angry Birds was just dropping banger after banger all year. You got Angry Birds Space, Angry Birds Friends, Angry Birds Star Wars, Bad Piggies. Anybody remember that one? Then we had Niantic give us the precursor to Pokemon Go in Ingress, another AR game about walking around IRL to find stuff. One of my favorite, Subway Surfers, dropped this year too. And of course, I can't forget the greatest mobile game of all time, the ultimate mom game, Candy Crush Saga. It would take a dozen videos to talk about everything that came out in 2012. I won't be doing that, but this video you're watching is part 2 of this 2012 retrospective, so go check out part 1 if you want.